Leave now. Don't say anything to Julian. The text message lit up my phone screen like an accusation. I'm Patricia Keller, 56 years old, and those words just shattered what was left of my world. My daughter-in-law Natalie planned this destruction perfectly. The expensive restaurant where my 3 grandchildren were finally laughing again after losing their grandfather 10 months ago. The $400 bottle of wine her father had just ordered without asking. The public setting with families at nearby tables already glancing our way. Even the timing, right when my 5-year-old grandson Caleb was showing me his drawing of Grandpa David wearing his chef's hat. Natalie wanted me gone, erased from my family's story, convinced my son Julian that his grieving mother was too broken, too poor, too dangerous for their children. What Natalie didn't know was that every plate of food being served around us, every kitchen technique the chef was using, every hospitality principle this restaurant operated on, I'd taught them. What she also didn't know was that I'd been building something with David for 25 years that grief couldn't destroy, even if medical debt and her manipulation were trying their hardest. I looked at my grandson's drawing, at David's smiling face rendered in crayon and hope, and decided his memory deserved better than this. Drop a comment if you've ever been attacked when you were most vulnerable. I read every single story you share. Because what happened next wasn't about money or restaurants or proving anything to people who'd already decided I was worthless. It was about 3 children who deserved to know their grandmother wasn't giving up, even when everything and everyone was telling her to disappear. Saturday evening at the Brass Table, Charleston's newest upscale dining destination. Table for 8 near the window with a view of the historic district. White tablecloths, candlelight, the kind of place that made you feel sophisticated just by sitting there. I should have known Natalie chose this restaurant for a reason. Maximum visibility. Maximum contrast between her family's elegance and my exhaustion. "Patricia, you look tired." Natalie's greeting the moment I arrived. My daughter-in-law, 31 years old, wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Not hello, not thanks for coming, just an immediate assessment of my decline. I was wearing my nicest outfit, a navy blue dress David had bought me 2 Christmases ago, paired with the pearl earrings he'd given me for our 28th anniversary. Natalie's jewelry alone, the diamonds at her ears and throat, could have paid off a significant chunk of the medical debt she was about to weaponize against me. Her parents, Robert and Catherine Spencer, looked like they'd stepped out of a Ralph Lauren advertisement. Old Charleston money, the kind that came with historical plaques and society page mentions. They'd never fully accepted their daughter marrying Julian, though they'd been too polite to say it directly. They'd especially never accepted me, the black woman who'd worked her way up from server to restaurant owner, who didn't have the right pedigree or accent or background. "Grandma Patricia." Caleb launched himself into my arms before anyone could stop him. "I missed you. We haven't seen you in forever." 3 weeks. It had been 3 weeks since Natalie started finding reasons to cancel our visits. "I missed you too, baby." Natalie's smile was ice-wrapped in politeness. "Caleb, sweetie, remember what we talked about?" Grandma Patricia is still adjusting after Grandpa David passed. We need to give her space. Still adjusting. 10 months after burying my husband of 30 years, after watching cancer take him piece by piece, after spending everything we had on treatments that bought us 6 extra months together, I was still adjusting. Like grief had a timeline, like there was a point where I'd wake up and everything would be fine again. Julian shifted uncomfortably in his chair. My son, 33 years old, caught between the woman he married and the mother who raised him. "Mom, how was your week?" "Busy." The restaurant had a good week, catering event on Thursday for 200 people. Payroll went out on time for all 28 employees. I wanted him to hear that I was still functioning, still working, still holding things together even when it felt like everything was falling apart. Robert Spencer examined the wine list like he was conducting an audit. "Patricia, at your age, after what you've been through, don't you think it's time to slow down?" Most women your age would be considering retirement, especially given your financial situation. Financial situation. He said it like those two words explained everything, justified everything, gave him permission to dismiss 25 years of building a business that had become a Charleston institution. I enjoy my work, I said carefully. But surely, Catherine leaned forward, her $30,000 Cartier watch catching the candlelight, you must be concerned about stability, especially after what David went through. The medical expenses, the experimental therapies. They thought it bankrupted me. They thought the cancer that took David also took everything we'd built. My 7-year-old granddaughter Jordan looked confused. Grandma Patricia makes the best food in Charleston. Everybody says so. That's nice, dear. Catherine patted Jordan's hand with the kind of condescension that made my teeth ache. But running a business and managing real wealth are completely different things. The server approached, a young man in his 20s, professional smile in place. His name tag read Tyler. He glanced at me and did a subtle double take, recognition flickering across his features before he caught himself. Good evening, everyone. Can I start you with drinks tonight? Actually, Natalie's voice carried across our section, deliberately loud enough for nearby tables to hear. We're having a family discussion about my mother-in-law's future. Perhaps something appropriate for the occasion. Robert pointed to the wine list without consulting anyone. The Opus 1 Cabernet, $425. Patricia's celebrating tonight, aren't you? One last nice evening before some difficult conversations. 425 美元. Like that number meant nothing to people who'd never earned it through 12-hour days and burned hands and staff meetings at midnight. Grandma Patricia always treats us special, Maya said loyally, my 9-year-old granddaughter who still believed in fairness. With what money, sweetheart? Natalie's voice was honey poured over broken glass. Your grandmother doesn't have that kind of income anymore. Not since she had to focus on other things. Other things. Taking care of my dying husband. Holding his hand through chemotherapy. Staying up nights when the pain got too bad for him to sleep. Tyler was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. I'll bring the wine, he said carefully. And ma'am, Chef Raymond asked me to let him know when you arrived. Should I tell him you're here? Raymond, my former sous chef, who'd worked at Keller's Kitchen for 8 years before I helped him open this place. Who's Raymond? Natalie's voice sharpened. Just someone I know. Catherine pulled out her phone, scrolling through documents. Patricia, we need to discuss something important. About the children's future. Their stability. She showed her screen. Property records. Business filings. Julian and Natalie's mortgage is $340,000. The children's college funds are inadequate. And frankly, after David's medical expenses, we're concerned about your ability to contribute meaningfully. Medical expenses. David's 14-month battle. $175,000 in treatment costs after insurance. They assumed it destroyed me financially. Julian was staring at his plate, caught between defending his mother and keeping peace with his wife. The children need stability, Robert continued. They need grandparents who can provide real opportunities, not just sentimentality. That's when my phone buzzed with Natalie's text, the one telling me to leave. To disappear from my grandchildren's lives because my grief made her uncomfortable, because a black woman who'd built something from nothing didn't fit the narrative she wanted. I read the message, felt something shift inside me that had everything to do with David's memory, with 3 children who deserved better. Everything okay, Mom? Julian asked. I looked at Caleb's drawing of his grandfather, at the smile he'd drawn that captured something essential about the man I'd loved. And I made a decision that had nothing to do with pride and everything to do with refusing to let Natalie's narrative become my grandchildren's memory of who I was. Before I could respond, Tyler returned with a message that was about to change everything. Mrs. Keller, Chef Raymond asked if you have time after dinner to discuss the new menu. He wants your opinion on the Southern Fusion direction. The temperature at the table dropped. Because in that moment, Tyler had revealed something Natalie didn't know. I wasn't just some broke widow they could dismiss. I was someone the chef consulted. Natalie's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. You know the chef here? Raymond worked for me for 8 years before opening this place, I said quietly. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Catherine and Robert exchanged glances, recalculating something in their heads. Julian looked up from his plate, actually looked at me, like he was seeing something he'd forgotten. Worked for you, Robert repeated slowly. At your, what did you call it? Your restaurant? Keller's Kitchen, on King Street. Oh, I know that place, Catherine said, her tone shifting to something that tried to sound impressed but came out condescending. Cute little spot. Very authentic. Soul food, right? Authentic. The word white people used when they meant not for us. And soul food, like 25 years of building a restaurant that served elevated Southern cuisine that had been featured in Bon Appetit and Garden and Gun, could be reduced to a stereotype. We serve Southern cuisine, I said. Contemporary interpretations of traditional recipes, farm to table before it was trendy, local suppliers, seasonal menus. How quaint, Margaret said. And you do catering too? For small events, I assume. Small events. Last Thursday's catering was for the Charleston Medical Association's annual gala, 200 guests, $85 per plate, $17,000 contract. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of defending myself, not yet. Natalie had recovered from her surprise. Well, that's wonderful that you have your little business to keep you occupied, but that's actually part of what we need to discuss. The restaurant, your work schedule, how it's affecting your ability to be present for the children. I see them every weekend, I said. You used to see them every weekend. Before David got sick, you were there for every school event, every birthday party, every family dinner. Now you're always working, always tired, always forgive me, but always a little bit checked out. Julian was watching this exchange like it was a tennis match, his head turning between his wife and his mother, still not speaking. Grief takes time, Natalie. Of course it does. No one is judging you for grieving, but it's been 10 months, Patricia. At some point, grief becomes an excuse for not moving forward. She reached across the table and put her hand on mine, a gesture that looked sympathetic but felt like ownership. We're worried about you. Your health, your mental state, your ability to make sound decisions. There it was, the setup. Not we're concerned, we want to help, but you're not capable of making sound decisions. The language you used before suggesting someone needed a guardian, a conservator, someone else to take control. My decisions are fine, I said, pulling my hand back. Are they, though? Robert leaned forward. Because from where we're sitting, Patricia, you're a 6-year-old widow with substantial medical debt, running a business that requires 80-hour work weeks, barely seeing your grandchildren, refusing help when it's offered. What help are you offering, Robert? Practical help, financial planning, estate management. Catherine and I have been discussing it with Natalie and Julian. We think it might be time to consider some changes. For everyone's benefit. Changes. I'd heard that word before, right before David's diagnosis, when the insurance company wanted to make changes to his coverage. Right before his death, when the hospice nurse talked about changes in his breathing. Changes never meant improvement. Changes meant loss. What kind of changes? Natalie took over, her voice gentle but firm. We think you should consider selling the restaurant. The stress is too much for someone in your situation. You could pay off David's medical debts, have enough left over for a comfortable retirement, maybe a small condo somewhere less expensive than Charleston. You could finally rest. Rest. The word people used when they meant disappear. When they meant stop being visible. Stop taking up space. Stop reminding us that you exist. And what about Keller's Kitchen? The staff? The suppliers who depend on our contracts? They'll find other work, Catherine said dismissively. That's how business works. Besides, Surely you're not suggesting your personal attachment to a restaurant is more important than your health and your grandchildren's welfare. Maya was listening now, her 9-year-old face scrunched up in confusion. But Grandma loves the restaurant. It was her and Grandpa's dream. Dreams change, sweetheart, Natalie said. Grandma Patricia needs to think about what's best for everyone now, not just what she wants. What she wants. Like my entire life's work was a selfish indulgence. Like David and I hadn't built something that employed 28 people, that fed thousands of families, that had become a Charleston institution. Tyler returned with the wine, pouring carefully. As he reached my glass, he said quietly, just loud enough for me to hear, "Chef Raymond said to tell you the pompano special tonight was your recipe." He finally got it right. My recipe. The dish David and I had spent 2 years perfecting. The one that had put Keller's kitchen on the map. And Raymond was using it here, at the brass table, the restaurant Natalie had chosen to humiliate me in. I looked at Tyler, really looked at him, and saw something in his expression. Recognition, yes, but also solidarity. He knew who I was. He knew what I'd built. And he was trying, in his own small way, to remind me. "Please tell Raymond I'd love to see him after dinner," I said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. Natalie's jaw tightened. "Patricia, we're in the middle of an important family discussion. Perhaps socializing with the staff can wait." The staff. Like Raymond was some servant instead of a chef I'd mentored, whose career I'd helped launch, who still called me every week asking for advice. But before I could respond, Julian finally spoke. "Mom, is what Natalie said true? About the medical debt? Are you in financial trouble?" I looked at my son, my beautiful boy who'd grown into a man I barely recognized anymore. When had he started believing his wife's version of me, instead of knowing the truth himself? "Julian, we need to talk. But not here. Not like this." "Why not here?" Natalie interrupted. "We're family. We should be able to discuss these things openly. Unless you have something to hide?" That's when I realized what this dinner really was. Not an intervention, not concern. This was a deposition. They were building a case, creating witnesses, establishing a record of my supposed incompetence. And they were doing it in public, in a place they thought I had no power, no connections, no way to fight back. "I don't have anything to hide," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But I'm not going to discuss my finances at a dinner table in front of my grandchildren." "The grandchildren who are affected by your finances," Robert said. "Patricia, let's be direct. We know about the $175,000 in medical debt from David's treatment. We know your restaurant operates on thin margins. We know you refinanced your house last year." How did they know that? I'd kept the refinancing private, handled it through my lawyer. The only way they could have accessed that information was if they'd been actively investigating me, or if someone had given them access to records they shouldn't have. I looked at Julian. "Did you give them my financial information?" He had the decency to look ashamed. "Mom," Natalie was worried. "She asked me to check on some things, make sure you were okay. I didn't think it would turn into this." "You didn't think your wife would use private information to ambush your mother at dinner?" "It's not an ambush," Natalie said sharply. "It's an intervention. Patricia, you're drowning, and you're too proud to admit it. We're trying to throw you a lifeline before you lose everything David worked for." Everything David worked for. She said it like she knew him, like she understood what our marriage had been. Natalie had met David twice before the cancer diagnosis. She'd come to exactly 3 family dinners in the 6 years she'd been married to Julian. She'd spent most of David's illness making excuses about why she couldn't visit, why the children shouldn't be exposed to sickness, why it was too difficult for her to handle. "You don't know what David worked for," I said quietly. "I know he'd want his grandchildren taken care of," Natalie shot back. "I know he'd want you to make rational decisions instead of clinging to a failing business out of sentiment." Failing business. Keller's Kitchen had grossed $2.6 million last year. We'd been profitable every year except 2019 when we did a full kitchen renovation. Our catering division was booked 4 months in advance, but these people had decided my business was failing because it fit their narrative better. The restaurant isn't failing. Then why did you take out a second mortgage? Catherine asked. Why refinance at your age if the business is so successful? Because David's insurance didn't cover experimental treatments. Because when you're watching your husband die and there's a trial that might give him more time, you don't think about mortgages or retirement. You think about 6 more months, maybe a year, maybe enough time to say everything you need to say. The table went quiet. Even Natalie had the grace to look away. But Robert recovered quickly. Which is exactly why you're not in a position to make clear decisions now. Patricia, grief clouds judgment. The debt, the overwork, the isolation, these are all signs that you need help managing your affairs. Managing your affairs. The language of conservatorship, of legal guardianship. They weren't just suggesting I sell the restaurant, they were building a case to take control. Is that what this is about? You want to manage my affairs? We want to protect the family, Natalie said, including you. Patricia, there's something else we need to discuss. David's life insurance. My blood went cold. The life insurance. The $480,000 policy David had taken out 15 years ago meant for the grandchildren's education. He'd set it up as a trust with me, as the trustee, the money designated specifically for Maya, Jordan, and Caleb's college funds. What about it? We think, given your current financial situation, given the medical debts you're carrying, that it might be better if someone else managed that trust, someone with more experience in financial planning. There it was, the real reason for this dinner. They didn't just want me to sell the restaurant, they wanted control of the children's trust fund. Nearly $500,000 that David had specifically placed under my control because he trusted me to use it wisely. That money is for the children's education. It's in a trust. A trust you control, Robert said. A trust that requires your signature for any distributions. Patricia, we're concerned that in your current state, you might make decisions that aren't in the children's best interest. My current state? Your grief, Natalie said softly, like she was being kind. Your financial stress, your workload. We've been documenting some concerning behaviors, the missed school events, the times you've seemed confused on the phone, the way you've been isolating yourself, documenting. They'd been building a file, gathering evidence, preparing to have me declared incompetent, so they could take control of the money David had left for his grandchildren. I looked at Julian, really looked at him. Did you know about this? About them trying to take control of your father's trust? He couldn't meet my eyes. Mom, they're just trying to help. If you're struggling, if the debt is too much, maybe it would be better if someone else handled the financial stuff. You could focus on healing. My son, my baby boy, the child I'd raised, the man I'd thought I knew. And he was sitting here, letting his wife and her parents scheme to take everything his father had left. But before I could respond, before I could find the words to make him understand what was happening, Tyler appeared at the table again. But this time, he wasn't alone. Chef Raymond stood beside him, tall and confident in his whites, a smile on his face that told me he'd heard at least some of what was happening. Mrs. Keller, he said warmly, I'm so glad you're here. I've been hoping to talk to you about something important. And in that moment, I knew. Raymond understood. He'd seen this kind of thing before, and he was about to give me exactly what I needed. Raymond's presence shifted something in the room. He had that kind of authority, the kind that came from running a successful kitchen, from being respected in Charleston's tight-knit culinary community. Natalie and her parents might not have known who he was, but they recognized power when they saw it. Raymond, I said, grateful for the interruption. How have you been? Busy. Thanks to you. That connection you made for me with the James Beard Foundation, the nomination came through. I'm a semi-finalist for Best Chef Southeast. Natalie's smile froze. James Beard Foundation. Even she knew what that meant. The most prestigious culinary awards in the country, and I'd helped make that connection. That's wonderful, I said genuinely. You've earned it. I wouldn't be here without you, Mrs. Keller. Without those years at Keller's Kitchen learning technique, learning how to run a kitchen, learning what real hospitality means. He turned to address the table. I don't know if Patricia told you, but she's a legend in Charleston food circles. Half the successful restaurants in this city were started by people who worked for her. She doesn't just run a business. She builds careers. Catherine's expression was priceless. The casual dismissal of my cute little spot was colliding with the reality that the chef at this expensive restaurant, the one she'd been so eager to impress, considered me a mentor. How nice, she managed. Actually, Mrs. Keller, that's part of what I wanted to discuss. The Charleston Restaurant Association dinner next month. We're honoring you with the Lifetime Achievement Award. I'm supposed to keep it quiet, but since you're here, I wanted to make sure you'd accept. Lifetime Achievement Award. I'd heard rumors about the nomination, but I'd assumed it wouldn't happen this year, not with David's death, not with everything else falling apart. I'd be honored, Raymond. The mayor's going to present it. Governor's sending a representative. It's a big deal, Mrs. Keller. Your impact on this city's culinary scene, on small business development, on food access programs, it matters. People know that. Robert cleared his throat. That's very impressive, Patricia. Though I have to wonder, with all these responsibilities, these awards and recognition, when do you find time for your grandchildren? Raymond's eyes narrowed slightly. He'd heard the dig. Actually, Mrs. Keller's work with food access programs specifically benefits children. The after-school meal program she founded serves 300 kids a day. The culinary training program for at-risk youth has placed 47 young people in restaurant jobs over the past 3 years. When people talk about Patricia Keller, they talk about someone who shows up for children every single day. The silence at the table was deafening. Maya was looking at me with wide eyes, like she was seeing her grandmother for the first time. Jordan had stopped coloring. Even Caleb seemed to understand something important was happening. I didn't know you did that stuff, Grandma, Maya said softly. Your grandfather and I started those programs together, I said. It was important to him that we give back. Natalie recovered quickly. That's wonderful charity work, Patricia, but it doesn't change the fact that you're overwhelmed. In fact, it proves our point. You're trying to do too much, be too much, and something has to give. We're worried it's going to be your health or your relationship with your grandchildren. Or your business, Robert added. Patricia, running a restaurant and multiple charitable programs while managing grief and debt, that's not sustainable. You need to make choices. Raymond crossed his arms. I'm sorry, but who are you to tell Mrs. Keller, what's sustainable? Do you run a business? Do you know what it takes to build something from nothing and keep it running for 25 years? I'm a attorney, Robert said coldly. I understand financial management and risk assessment, and I'm family, which gives me standing to express concern. Family, Raymond repeated. Right, well, as someone who considers Mrs. Keller family too, someone who owes his entire career to her generosity and mentorship, I can tell you that she's one of the strongest, most capable people I've ever known. And if she seems tired, maybe it's because she buried her husband 10 months ago, not because she's incompetent. The word hung in the air, incompetent. Raymond had named what everyone at this table was dancing around. No one said incompetent, Natalie protested. You didn't have to. I heard enough while I was in the kitchen. Raymond looked at me. Mrs. Keller, I don't mean to intrude on family business, but if you need anything at all, you call me. You've got a lot of people in this city who have your back. Don't forget that. He squeezed my shoulder and walked back toward the kitchen, leaving behind a table full of people recalculating their strategy. Julian finally spoke. Mom, why didn't you tell me about the award? About the programs. I didn't know you were doing all that. You didn't ask, baby. You've been busy with your own life. I didn't want to burden you. It's not a burden. It's amazing. He looked at Natalie. Did you know about any of this? Natalie's mask was slipping. It's beside the point, Julian. Your mother is still carrying massive debt. She's still working herself to exhaustion. Awards don't pay bills. No, but successful businesses do, I said quietly. Which is what I've been trying to tell you. I'm not broke, Natalie. I'm not failing. I'm grieving, and I'm working through debt that I took on willingly to give my husband more time. But I'm managing. Are you? She pulled out her phone. Because I have documentation here that suggests otherwise. Late payments, missed appointments, confusion about dates and times. Julian can confirm. You've been declining, Patricia. And we can't just stand by and watch it happen. Documentation, evidence. They really had been building a case, preparing for the moment when they'd try to take control. But what Natalie didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been documenting too. Every canceled visit, every excuse, every time she'd kept the children from me without reason. And I'd been consulting with my own lawyer, the one who'd helped David set up the trust specifically to protect it from exactly this kind of manipulation. The game was about to change, but first, I needed to know exactly how far Julian had fallen into Natalie's trap. Julian, I said, looking at my son, do you really think I'm incompetent? Do you really believe I can't manage my own life? He hesitated, and in that hesitation, I saw everything I needed to know. My son was choosing his wife over his mother, and I was going to have to fight this battle alone. Mom, I don't think you're incompetent, Julian said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. I just think you're going through a really hard time. And maybe you need help that you're too proud to ask for. Too proud. The words cut deeper than he knew. David used to say pride was my greatest strength and my biggest weakness, that I'd rather break than bend. But this wasn't about pride. This was about 3 children who deserved their grandmother, about a legacy David and I had built, about refusing to let grief become a weapon against me. What kind of help are you suggesting, Julian? He looked at Natalie, seeking permission or courage. I couldn't tell which. I think, maybe it would be good if you had someone to help manage things. The finances, the business decisions, the trust fund, just temporarily, until you're more stable. Someone like Natalie's parents. They have experience. Dad's firm manages estates worth millions. They know how to handle complex financial situations. And what would I do while they're managing my complex financial situation? Rest, Natalie said, like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Heal. Focus on your mental health. Maybe some grief counseling, some time away from the stress. We could set you up somewhere comfortable, somewhere you wouldn't have to worry about payroll or suppliers or any of it. Somewhere comfortable. She meant somewhere controlled. Somewhere they could monitor me, limit my access to my own money, slowly take everything David and I had built. I have a better idea, I said, pulling out my own phone. Why don't we talk about what's really going on here? I opened my email, found the message from my lawyer that I'd received this morning, the one I'd been debating whether to use. But Natalie had forced my hand. 3 weeks ago, you filed paperwork with family court, a petition for emergency guardianship, claiming I was mentally incompetent due to grief and financial instability. You didn't think I'd find out about that, did you? Natalie's face went pale. Julian's head snapped toward his wife. You did what? It was precautionary, she said quickly. Just in case Patricia's situation deteriorated, we wanted to have legal options available to protect the children's interests. To protect the children's interests or to get access to the trust fund David left them? That's not fair, Patricia. This isn't about money. Then why did your petition specifically request that your father be named trustee of David's life insurance trust? Why did it include a detailed plan for liquidating my assets, including the restaurant? Julian was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Natalie, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't try to have my mother declared incompetent without telling me. I told you we needed to take action. I told you your mother was declining. You agreed something needed to be done. I agreed to talk to her, to offer help, not to file legal papers behind her back. He turned to his in-laws. Did you know about this? Robert had the decency to look uncomfortable. Julian, we were acting in everyone's best interest. Your mother is clearly struggling. The petition was simply a safeguard. A safeguard that would give you control of $500,000 that my father specifically left for his grandchildren, with my mother as trustee, because he trusted her judgment. Your father made that decision before he got sick, Catherine said. Before he knew how much Patricia would struggle after his death. If he'd known, he might have made different arrangements. The presumption of it, the audacity to claim they knew what David would have wanted better than I did. David, who'd held my hand in the hospital 3 days before he died and made me promise to protect the children's money from anyone who tried to use it for their own purposes. He'd known. Somehow, he'd known this might happen. My husband knew exactly what he was doing when he named me trustee. And the petition you filed is going to be denied because I have documentation of my sound financial management, letters from my accountant, from my business lawyer, from my doctor confirming that I'm perfectly capable of managing my affairs. Your doctor? Natalie's voice rose. You went to your doctor about this? I went to my doctor for a full cognitive evaluation the day after I found out about your petition, passed with flying colors. Turns out grief doesn't make you incompetent. It just makes you sad. The waiter approached nervously with our entrees. The table sat in hostile silence as he placed plates in front of each of us, the expensive food that nobody was going to eat. Maya was crying quietly. Jordan had his arm around her. Caleb was clutching his drawing of David, looking confused and scared. Maybe we should continue this conversation somewhere else, Julian said, looking at his children. This isn't appropriate for them to hear. You're right, I said. It's not appropriate for children to hear their parents try to steal their inheritance and have their grandmother declared incompetent. But here we are. I stood up, pulled out my wallet, and placed $500 on the table. More than enough to cover the expensive wine and the meals no one was going to eat. Natalie, you're going to withdraw that petition. You're going to stop trying to isolate me from my grandchildren. And you're going to understand something very clearly. I'm not some broken old woman you can manipulate. I'm a black woman who spent 56 years building businesses, raising families, and surviving things you can't imagine. David's death broke my heart, but it didn't break me. I turned to Julian. Baby, I love you, but you need to decide right now whether you're going to stand with your wife while she tries to steal from your children and destroy your mother, or whether you're going to remember who raised you and what your father would have wanted. Mom, wait. No, you don't get to wait anymore. You don't get to sit there quietly while she dismantles everything your father and I built. You make a choice, right now. I looked at my grandchildren, 3 beautiful faces watching their family fall apart. Maya, Jordan, Caleb. I love you. Your grandpa loved you. And everything I do is to protect what he wanted for you. Remember that. Then I walked out of the brass table, leaving behind the expensive restaurant, the expensive wine, the expensive people who'd thought they could destroy me over dinner. But I wasn't going far, because I had one more move to make, one more card to play, and it was going to show Natalie exactly who she'd decided to go to war with. Raymond was waiting by the kitchen door, his phone already out. I recorded some of that. Not all of it, but enough. You want it? Send it to me. And Raymond? Thank you. Mrs. Keller. People like you don't come around often. People who build others up instead of tearing them down. Whatever you need, you've got it. I walked out into the Charleston night, alone but not defeated. Because tomorrow, Natalie was going to discover what happened when you tried to take everything from someone who'd already lost what mattered most. I didn't go home. I went to Keller's kitchen. It was 9 p.m. on a Saturday, and the dinner rush was winding down. My staff looked up when I walked in, surprised to see me. I wasn't supposed to be here tonight. I was supposed to be at that expensive dinner, playing the role of broken widow while Natalie dismantled my life. Miss Patricia? Marcus, my head chef, not the grandson I'd named, but a 3-4-year-old black man I'd hired straight out of culinary school 12 years ago. Everything okay? No, Marcus. Everything's not okay, but it will be. I went to my office, the small room in the back where David and I used to sit together planning menus, reviewing budgets, dreaming about the future. His photo still sat on the desk, him in his chef's coat, grinning at the camera, alive and healthy before the cancer came. "I'm fighting back," I told his picture. "I hope that's what you'd want." My phone buzzed. Julian. I let it go to voicemail, then Natalie, then Julian again, then a number I didn't recognize. I ignored them all and opened my laptop. The email from my lawyer, Diane Morrison, was waiting. She'd been preparing for this since I'd told her about Natalie's increasing hostility, about the canceled visits, about the subtle campaign to paint me as incompetent. Diane didn't mess around. She'd been a family law attorney for 30 years, and she'd seen this playbook before. The petition for guardianship was attached. Reading it made my blood boil. Respondent demonstrates concerning behaviors including social withdrawal, financial mismanagement, and inability to maintain consistent contact with minor grandchildren. Petitioner believes respondent's grief has impaired judgment and poses risk to children's welfare and financial security. Social withdrawal. I'd been working. Financial mismanagement. I'd been paying off medical debt while keeping my business profitable. Inability to maintain consistent contact, because Natalie kept canceling visits. But Diane's response was thorough. Medical evaluation showing perfect cognitive function, financial records showing steady business income and responsible debt management. Testimony from staff, from suppliers, from the Charleston Restaurant Association, and something else. Something I'd asked her to investigate but hadn't expected to find. Natalie's bank records. Not the joint account she shared with Julian, but a separate account in her name only, with deposits from Robert and Catherine Spencer totaling $85,000 over the past 6 months, and a wire transfer request dated 3 days ago, contingent on successful resolution of family matter, the amount $150,000. They were paying her. Her own parents were paying her to have me declared incompetent so they could access the trust fund. This wasn't about concern or family welfare. This was a business transaction. I forwarded everything to my personal email, then to a secure cloud storage. Then I did something David would have questioned, but would ultimately have understood. I sent the bank records to Julian. No message, just the attachment. Let him see what his wife had been doing. Let him decide if $85,000 in secret payments from her parents looked like genuine concern for his mother's welfare. My phone rang immediately. Julian. This time I answered, "Mom, what is this? These bank records, where did you get these?" "Your wife has been receiving payments from her parents. $85,000 so far, with another $150,000 promised once they successfully get control of your father's trust fund." Silence. Then, there has to be an explanation. Maybe they were helping with expenses. Maybe... Julian, stop. Just stop defending her and look at the dates. Every payment corresponds with an action against me. $25,000 when she filed the guardianship petition. $30,000 when she submitted the financial mismanagement claims. $30,000 when she got you to sign papers giving her access to my medical records. Your wife has been getting paid to destroy me. I didn't sign anything giving her access to your medical records. Check the insurance authorization you signed last month. The one she said was for the children's school physical. Read the fine print. I heard rustling, papers being moved, then a sharp intake of breath. She told me this was just for the kids. She said she needed my signature for their sports physicals. She lied, baby. She's been lying about a lot of things. And now I need to know, are you going to keep believing her lies, or are you going to help me protect your children's inheritance from their mother? More silence. Then, I need to talk to Natalie. You do that. But Julian, when you talk to her, remember something. Your father made me trustee of that money for a reason. He knew there might be people who'd try to take it. He trusted me to protect it. Do you trust me? Mom, Simple question. Do you trust me? Yes. God, yes. Of course I trust you. I just thought, Natalie made it sound like you were falling apart, like you needed help, like I was incompetent, like I couldn't manage my own life. Julian, I've run a successful business for 25 years. I raised you as a single mother for the first 8 years of your life before I met David. I've survived poverty, racism, the death of my husband, and $175,000 in medical debt. Do I really seem like someone who can't handle her affairs? No. No. You don't. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have questioned her more. I should have trusted you. Yes, you should have. But you can make it right now. Come to the restaurant tomorrow. Bring the children. We need to have a real conversation about what happens next. What about Natalie? What about her? She tried to have me declared incompetent so she could steal your children's money. You need to decide what kind of man you're going to be. The kind who stands by while his wife destroys his family, or the kind your father raised you to be. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, not from fear but from rage, and something else, grief. Because David should have been here for this. David would have known what to do. David would have protected our family in ways I was still figuring out. But David wasn't here, and I was done being the victim in Natalie's story. Tomorrow, I'd start building my own narrative. One where grief didn't equal weakness, where debt didn't equal incompetence, and where a black widow in Charleston, South Carolina proved that you don't destroy someone who's already lost everything. You just teach them they have nothing left to lose. Sunday morning, Julian arrived at Keller's kitchen at 10 a.m. with all 3 children. No Natalie. That told me everything I needed to know about the conversation they'd had after I sent those bank records. Maya ran to me first, wrapping her arms around my waist. Grandma, Daddy said we're spending the whole day with you. That's right, baby. I thought we could make Sunday dinner together. Like we used to with Grandpa David. Jordan and Caleb joined the hug. Behind them, Julian looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes, rumpled clothes, the expression of a man who'd spent the night confronting ugly truths. Can we talk? He asked. I set the children up in the kitchen with Marcus, who was teaching them how to make biscuits from scratch, then led Julian to my office. He sat in the chair across from my desk, the one David used to occupy, and put his head in his hands. She admitted it, all of it, the payments from her parents, the plan to get control of the trust fund, the guardianship petition. He looked up, eyes red. Mom, she said she was doing it for us, for our family, that we needed the money, that you were too emotional to manage it properly, that it was better for everyone. Do you believe that? No. I told her it was theft, that she was trying to steal from our own children. She said I was being dramatic, that it was just reallocating assets within the family, that you'd eventually thank her for taking the burden off your shoulders. He laughed bitterly. She actually said burden. Like Dad's trust fund for his grandchildren was a burden on you. What did you say? I told her to leave. Packed a bag for her, called her parents, told them to come get their daughter. She's staying with them while we figure out next steps. And the children? They're with me, where they should be, with someone who actually cares about protecting them instead of profiting off them. He met my eyes. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have seen it. Should have questioned her sooner. I let my wife convince me that my own mother was incompetent. What kind of son does that make me? The kind who wants to believe the best in people, the kind your father raised you to be. But Julian, wanting to believe the best, doesn't mean ignoring the worst. I know, and I'm done ignoring it. He pulled out his phone, showed me a text conversation. I told Natalie she needs to withdraw the guardianship petition by Tuesday, or I'm filing for divorce and requesting full custody. I also told her parents that if they don't return every penny they paid her, I'll report it as elder financial abuse. Elder financial abuse. The legal term for exactly what they'd been attempting. How did they respond? Robert threatened to sue me, Catherine cried. Natalie said I'm destroying our family over money. None of them seem to understand that they're the ones who destroyed it the moment they decided to treat you like an inconvenient obstacle instead of the woman who raised their son-in-law. From the kitchen, I could hear the children laughing. Marcus was teaching them one of David's silly songs, the one about biscuits rising like sunshine. The sound of normalcy, of childhood, of everything Natalie's scheme had threatened to destroy. What happens now? Julian asked. Now we protect those children. We make sure the trust David left them stays safe. We document everything in case Natalie tries to fight the divorce, and we rebuild what was broken. Can we? Rebuild, I mean. After everything I did, everything I didn't do. I looked at my son, this man who'd made mistakes but was trying to correct them. Julian, your father used to say that family isn't about never falling down. It's about who helps you stand back up. You fell. You believed lies about me. But you're standing now. You're choosing your children over your wife's greed. That's what matters. I want to help with the restaurant, not manage it. I know you don't need that, but help. Marketing, legal review, whatever you need. I want to understand what you and Dad built, what I should have been paying attention to all along. I'd like that. We sat in silence for a moment, the comfortable kind that comes after hard truths have been spoken. Then Julian said, "Mom, can I ask you something? Why didn't you tell me? About the awards, the programs, the impact you're having? I had no idea you were doing so much. Because I didn't think I needed to prove myself to my own son. Because I thought you knew who I was, what I'd built, what I was capable of. Because when your father died, I thought the people who knew me, really knew me, would remember that grief doesn't erase competence. I should have remembered. I'm sorry I didn't." From the kitchen, "Grandma, come see. My biscuit looks like Grandpa's face." I smiled. "We should go. Marcus might need rescuing." "Mom, one more thing. The dinner last night, people recorded it. Some of it's on social media. Natalie's father yelling about your finances, Raymond defending you, me sitting there like an idiot, not saying anything. It's not gone viral or anything, but people are talking. Let them talk. I'm done hiding, done apologizing for surviving, done letting people use my grief as evidence of weakness." We walked back to the kitchen together, father and son, both of us grieving David, but both of us choosing to honor his memory by protecting what he'd built. The children were covered in flour, laughing, creating chaos in the way only grandchildren can. This was what Natalie had tried to take, not money or property or legal rights. This, the mess and joy and connection that comes from family who shows up for each other. She'd failed. And tomorrow, when she had to officially withdraw her guardianship petition, when she had to face the consequences of treating a black widow like an obstacle instead of a force, she'd understand the cost of her miscalculation. But today, I was going to teach my grandchildren how to make their grandfather's biscuits. I was going to laugh with my son. I was going to exist in this space David and I had created, this legacy that grief couldn't destroy and greed couldn't steal. Monday morning brought complications I hadn't anticipated. Natalie withdrew the guardianship petition, but not quietly. She released a statement through her father's law firm, claiming she'd been manipulated by incomplete information and that she'd only been trying to protect her children's interests. The statement painted me as someone who'd weaponized legal technicalities against a concerned daughter-in-law. The Charleston social media scene, small and interconnected as it was, picked it up immediately. Half the comments supported me, praising me for standing up to family manipulation. The other half questioned whether I'd been too harsh, whether family disputes should be handled privately, whether an older widow really was equipped to manage complex finances and a demanding business while grieving. "Don't read the comments," Marcus advised, finding me scrolling through my phone in the office Tuesday morning. "People who don't know you don't get a vote." But the comments stung anyway, especially the ones suggesting that maybe Natalie had been right to worry, that maybe a 5-6-year-old grieving widow shouldn't be running a restaurant and managing trust funds, that maybe I was too proud to admit I needed help. The doubt crept in despite everything I knew to be true. Was I being stubborn? Was clinging to the restaurant and the trust fund about David's legacy or about my ego? Had grief actually clouded my judgment in ways I couldn't see? My phone rang. Diane Morrison, my lawyer. "Patricia, we need to talk about next steps. Natalie withdrew the petition, but her statement is creating potential liability issues. She's essentially accusing you of elder abuse by fighting back against her concern." "Let her accuse. I have documentation." "I know. But there's another issue. The video from the restaurant, the one Raymond's server recorded, someone leaked it to local news. Channel 4 wants a statement. So does the Post and Courier. My private family nightmare was becoming public. What should I say? The truth. That you're a successful business owner who was targeted by family members trying to access your grandchildren's trust fund, that you defended yourself legally and appropriately. Patricia, this could actually work in your favor. Public sentiment is largely on your side. After we hung up, I sat in David's chair, looking at his photo. "Is this what you'd want?" I asked him. "Our family drama on the news? Our private pain becoming public entertainment?" But I knew what David would say. He'd say that sometimes you have to stand in the light to keep other people from rewriting your story in the dark. He'd say that silence protects abusers, and speaking up protects future victims. "Miss Patricia?" Marcus appeared in the doorway again. "There's someone here to see you. Says she's from the Charleston Restaurant Association." The woman who entered was professional, mid-40 seconds, carrying a folder. "Mrs. Keller, I'm Sandra Williams from the CRA. I wanted to speak with you about the Lifetime Achievement Award we're presenting next month. I appreciate the honor, but given everything that's happening publicly, maybe this isn't the right time." "Actually, that's why I'm here. The board met this morning. We want to make a statement with this award. We want to highlight not just your culinary contributions but your resilience. Your story, what you're going through, it matters. A Black woman business owner standing up to family members trying to exploit her grief? That's exactly the kind of strength we want to celebrate." I wasn't sure if I wanted to be celebrated for surviving my daughter-in-law's betrayal. "Sandra, I appreciate it, but I don't want to be a symbol. I just want to run my restaurant and see my grandchildren." "You're already a symbol, whether you want to be or not. The question is whether you're going to control that narrative or let Natalie's statement be the last word." She had a point. Natalie had made this public. Responding wasn't creating drama, it was correcting the record. "What do you need from me?" "Accept the award. Let us tell your story properly. Let other women, especially other Black women facing similar situations, see that grief doesn't equal incompetence, that fighting back against financial exploitation isn't cruelty, it's survival." After she left, Julian called. "Mom, have you seen the news coverage?" "Not yet." "How bad is it?" "It's not bad. It's good. They're interviewing people you've helped, former employees, kids from the youth program. Everyone's talking about what you've built, how you've impacted Charleston." Natalie's statement backfired. She looks like someone trying to tear down a community institution. "And you? How are you handling all this?" "Honestly, I'm embarrassed it took public exposure for me to see what was right in front of me, But I'm also proud of you for fighting back. Proud that my children's grandmother is someone who doesn't back down when people try to diminish her. We talked for another 20 minutes about the kids, about his plans to move forward with the divorce, about his desire to be more involved in the restaurant. When we hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. Maybe this nightmare had a purpose. Maybe Natalie's attempt to destroy me would end up showing everyone, including myself, exactly what I was capable of surviving. Tomorrow, I'd start planning my acceptance speech for the award. Tonight, I'd call my grandchildren and remind them that standing up for yourself wasn't mean. It was necessary. And somewhere, I believe David was watching, proud that his wife hadn't let anyone, not even family, take what they'd built together. 3 months later, I stood on the stage at the Charleston Gaylord Center, accepting the Lifetime Achievement Award in front of 400 people. Julian sat in the front row with Maya, Jordan, and Caleb, all 3 children dressed up and beaming. Marcus was there with the entire Keller's Kitchen staff. Raymond had closed the brass table for the night so his team could attend. Even Diane Morrison, my lawyer, had come. Sandra Williams finished her introduction, listing my accomplishments. The restaurant that had employed 28 people for 25 years, the after-school meal program feeding 300 children daily, the youth culinary training that had placed 47 young people in careers, the scholarships David and I had funded, the impact that reached beyond food into community building. But perhaps most importantly, Sandra said, Patricia Keller has shown us that grief doesn't diminish capability, that being vulnerable doesn't mean being weak, that standing up to exploitation, even when it comes from family, is an act of love. Not just self-love, but love for the children whose futures you're protecting. The applause was overwhelming. I walked to the podium, David's photo in my pocket like a talisman, and looked out at faces that represented 30 years of my life. "Thank you," I said, "but I need to be honest with you. 3 months ago, I almost lost everything. Not because I was incompetent or failing, but because grief made me vulnerable, and someone saw that vulnerability as opportunity. I told the truth. Not all of it. I protected the children from the worst details, but enough. About Natalie's guardianship petition, about the scheme to access the trust fund, about Julian's difficult choice between his wife and his mother, about the night at the brass table when I'd almost walked away from my grandchildren because someone told me I wasn't worthy of them. I'm not standing here tonight because I'm strong," I continued. "I'm standing here because I had people who refused to let me disappear. Raymond, who reminded everyone who I was when they were trying to make me forget. Marcus, who called me out for working myself to death instead of asking for help. Julian, who chose truth over comfort. And David, my husband, who built protections into his trust fund because he knew people might try exactly what Natalie attempted." I pulled out David's photo, held it up. This man taught me that legacy isn't about perfection, it's about perseverance, about building something that survives you, about protecting the people who can't protect themselves. The audience was silent now, listening. 3 months ago, I thought accepting help meant admitting weakness. I've since hired an assistant manager, cut my hours from 70 a week to 40, started actually resting instead of just working until I collapsed. And you know what happened? The restaurant got better. The programs expanded. My relationship with my grandchildren deepened. Because I stopped trying to prove I could do everything alone and started building a team that could do it together. I looked at Julian. My son is learning the business now, planning to open a second location focused on youth training. My grandchildren are learning their grandfather's recipes. And I'm learning that honoring David's memory doesn't mean killing myself trying to be him. It means continuing what we started, but in ways that are sustainable. More applause. I held up my hand for quiet. If you take anything from my story, take this. Grief will make you vulnerable. People will try to exploit that vulnerability. But vulnerability isn't weakness, It's just proof that you loved someone enough that losing them changed you. Don't let anyone, not even family, use your grief as evidence that you're broken. You're not broken. You're healing, and healing takes time. I accepted the award, a beautiful glass sculpture of a tree with deep roots, returned to my seat where my grandchildren hugged me and Julian whispered, "Dad would be so proud." That night, after the ceremony, we went to Keller's kitchen, all of us, kids included, and made David's famous shrimp and grits. Maya measured rice. Jordan chopped vegetables under Marcus's supervision. Caleb stirred the pot while standing on a stool, his tongue stuck out in concentration, just like his grandfather used to do. "Grandma," Maya asked, "are you still sad about Grandpa?" "Every day, baby. But I'm also happy, especially right now with all of you. Mommy texted me," she said quietly. "She saw you on the news, getting the award. She said to tell you congratulations." Natalie, watching from Colombia, seeing what she'd tried to take. I didn't know if her congratulations were genuine or obligatory, didn't really matter. "That was kind of her," I said neutrally. Julian and I cleaned up together after the children went home. "Mom, I've been thinking, what if we named the second location David's Kitchen? As a tribute?" "He'd love that, but only if you promise to put his terrible dad jokes on the menu descriptions like he always wanted." We laughed, that good kind of laughter that comes after crying, after fighting, after surviving. The restaurant was quiet around us, full of memories and possibilities. I locked up around midnight, David's award under my arm, his photo back in my pocket. Drove home to the house we'd shared, where his chair still sat in the corner and his cookbook still lined the shelves. "We did it," I told his photo before bed. "Not perfectly, not the way we planned, but we did it. The restaurant's still here. The programs are growing. The kids are safe. Julian's finally understanding what we built. And I'm still standing." That's Patricia's story. That's what happened when my daughter-in-law tried to have me declared incompetent and steal my grandchildren's inheritance. She failed. But the fight taught me something I didn't expect. Sometimes the people trying to destroy you are partially right. Not about you being incompetent, but about you needing help. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? What city? What country? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing our community come together over these complicated stories about family, grief, and the fine line between strength and stubbornness. Here's the real question, and I need you to be completely honest. Was Natalie entirely wrong? Yes, she tried to steal from her own children. Yes, she filed a fraudulent guardianship petition. Yes, she took $85,000 in payments from her parents to destroy me. But was she wrong about me being overwhelmed? About me working myself to death? About me refusing help because I was too proud to admit I couldn't do it all alone? Hit that like button if this story made you think about your own relationship with grief, with work, with asking for help when you need it. Share it if you know someone who's been judged during their darkest moment, someone whose vulnerability was weaponized against them, someone who had to learn the hard way that accepting help isn't weakness. And subscribe for more real, honest stories about family exploitation, grief recovery, the complicated truth that sometimes the villain has a point even when their methods are unforgivable, and what it really means to honor someone's memory without destroying yourself in the process. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to a story that doesn't have easy answers, just complicated truths. And thanks for understanding that sometimes the most important victory isn't destroying your enemy. It's learning what they saw in you that you couldn't see in yourself. See you in the next video.